Hitler is often associated with his anti-Marxism, anti-democracy, anti-Semitism, and pro-German nationalistic ideologies. By 1932, his party had grown to be the biggest party on the Reichstag, despite not being originally as significant. So what owed him and his party's success and popularity? What made the Nazis and their ideology so appealing? But the real question is, who voted for Hitler and the Nazis, and why? In the following video, we have invited prestigious professors to go into detail about the aspects that have contributed to the Nazi Party and Hitler's growth in votes in these past elections. Professor Yasmin is an expert on Hitler's campaign and propaganda. Professor Hanat is an expert on the statistics of the elections and the differences of them from 1928, 1930, 1932, and 1933. Professor Hania is an expert on women and youth that supported the Nazis and the geographical factors that have affected the elections. And there will be a brief appearance of Professor Lena to talk about a historian's study on the effects of religion.
In 1930, Hitler and the Nazis pushed forward a campaign unlike any other campaign seen in Germany before. Why? What did Hitler do, you might ask? Now, he took propaganda to another level. For he traveled across the entire nation, giving extremely persuasive speeches, tending to various meetings, shaking hands, and taking pictures with these desperate people. He even went to the extent of kissing babies. As historian Shiri Owens Lampa states, Hitler's theatricality was linked to his oratorical force. He was persuasive with small groups, but he electrified large audiences. Of course, one of the main people involved in the rise of Hitler was Reich Minister of Propaganda of Nazi Germany, Joseph Goebbels. He is the one who organized these speeches and meetings and made sure to place posters of Hitler and the Nazis all over the country. You might ask, how could the people fall so easily? Well, as you all know, Germany was in a helpless position, with the people suffering from poverty, distress, and agony. These people urged for change, for they were extremely desperate at this point. Now, Hitler obviously took advantage of the situation, and his speeches appealed to all, every class. For he spoke about solving unemployment, expanding the army, restoring Germany's glory, and most importantly, he aimed to make Germany great again, through ending all war reparations to the Allies, forgetting about the Treaty of Versailles, and treating these Jews harshly. These ideas clearly appealed to all of these distressed people, and as the man himself, Hitler, said, through clever and constant application of propaganda, people can be made to see paradise as hell, and also the other way around, to consider the most wretched sort of life paradise. Now you see why Hitler and the Nazis appealed to the people. So let's take a look at who actually voted for them.
Germans responded to economical crises by voting according to what they perceived as their best economical self-interest. According to a study conducted by Harvard political scientist Gary King, mathematician Ori Rosen, and historian Martin Tanner, the previous analysis of German electoral results of the early 1930s are flawed. These analyses led to three theories, the first of which is the catch-all theory. This theory states that the National Socialist Party only gained voters because people were dissatisfied with other alternatives. However, this theory does not say anything useful about the Nazis in particular because it can apply to any other group and any other country. The second theory is the mass society theory. This theory states that citizens, mainly non-voters, felt the strongest about and supported extremist parties. Therefore, they voted for the first time ever in favor for the Nazis. However, this theory does not have any voting data, so it was dismissed. The third theory is the class theory, which states that various social groups were radicalized by the Nazis in order to vote for them. Therefore, they voted for the Nazis because they were influenced by their beliefs and ideology. However, it was dismissed because researchers disagree on who were the people that were convinced to vote for the Nazis. A socialist, Seymour Martin Lipset, states that the typical Nazi voter was a middle-class, self-employed Protestant who lived in a farm or in a small community. However, socialists Richard F. Hamilton states that it was only upper classes like the white collar and the self-employed Germans that were the basis of the Nazi electoral support. Due to Germany suffering from hyperinflation in the 1920s and the economical depression in 1929, unemployment increased and incomes fell, which led to two groups being dissatisfied by the overall political and economical situation. The first group were the unemployed who turned to the Communist Party because of their community property ideology, which states that in a marriage, both spouses have equal shares of the finances, and that if they divorce, both of them get equal advantages. The second group of people were the working poor, like the artisans, shopkeepers, small farmers, lawyers, and domestic workers. They supported the Nazis. These groups responded positively to Hitler going against big businesses and the Weimar government. They also responded to his promises of intensive development of Germany's economic resources and Germany's overall infrastructure, as well as his condemning of the Jewish real estate owners who owned most of the land and they thought took over Germany. Hitler's support was higher in the Protestant areas than in the Catholic regions. This is because the Catholic Church strongly condemned anyone who voted for Hitler. Therefore, it was mostly Protestants who voted for him because the Catholics did not want to go against their church. Thank you.
Relating to this, a study made by George L. Spenkuch and Philip Tillman on religious voters mentioned that our analysis confirms that religion is the single most important empirical predictor of NSDAP vote shares. In fact, constituencies' religious composition explains a greater share of the geographical variation in Nazi vote shares than all other available variables, either individually or combined. This means that religion is the most important factor when it comes to predicting the NSDAP vote shares, and that geographic location often is a major factor when it comes to religion, which would then have an effect on the voting. Now on to more specific geographical factors.
There are many geographical factors that affected elections that took place in Germany. This is very evident in the March elections of 1933. These would be the last multi-party German elections until December 2nd, 1990, which was when Germany was reunified into one country. When looked at the map, it is seen that the eastern coast, or the former Prussian territories, had majority of the votes, with the exception of Berlin, which had the lowest level of support. Ironically, it became the capital for the Nazis later on. The south and the west side had fewer votes for Nazi Germany because they were independent German states up until 1871. The Nazi Party had the most seats in the Reichstag. However, they were still not a majority. It had gained 43.91% of the votes and had gotten 44.51% of the seats, which made it the largest party in the Reichstag without a clear mandate. The Nazis changed their strategy to gaining electoral votes rather than seizing power through a coup because of the failure of Hitler's Munich beer hall putsch in 1923. Regarding the changed strategy of the Nazis to gaining electoral votes, the historian Ian Kershaw said, "The repeated claim before the seizure of power that the NSDAP, as a national social revolutionary movement and not simply another political party, would create new bonds of unity through its elimination and transcending of the party system, was highly attractive and conveyed much of the Nazism's dynamic appeal." Today, many that supported Nazi are not a part of Germany. For example, Poland and the Soviet Union. A big factor that affected these elections was the gender of support. During the Depression, the NSDAP, rather than the German left, attracted more female voters. For a long time in the Weimar Republic's history, women voted significantly fewer than men, especially in the rural areas. And when they were given the chance, they most likely followed their husband's opinions. Despite this, there were noticeable differences between the votes of the men and women. Before 1932, many women were unlikely to vote for the Nazi Party. On top of that, in the presidential elections of 1932, many women voted for Hindenburg rather than Hitler as their president. However, the gap between the two genders was becoming fewer and fewer as time went on. This was more prominent in the Protestant areas.
As said by the historian Theodor Abel, support for the NSDAP extended far beyond the lower middle class to elements of the socially established Grossbürgertum upper middle class, as well as to sizable segments of the blue-collar working class. At the height of its electoral popularity in 1932, the NSDAP had managed to transcend the basic cleavages of German political culture, mobilizing a mass following that was without precedent in its extraordinary social diversity. It is no surprise that in the elections of July 1932, the NSDAP gained the votes of about 6.5 million German women, thus increasing the percentage from female to male votes. Another adding factor was the age. The NSDAP always emphasized on the youth's involvement in politics. This was the opposite of the traditional rights views, who believed that the youth had no say in the government. This is seen by the age of the membership, which averaged slightly under 29 from 1925 to 1932 in the Nazi Party. It did rise to about 32 in 1932. In the bigger picture, the electoral votes turnout increased from 75.6% in 1928 to 80% in 1932. This meant that more and more people wanted a change in the Weimar Republic, men, women, and youth combined. Who knew this meant having Hitler as a leader, making way for the rise of evil in Germany?
Hitler and his party's overall growth from 1928 to 1933 had many factors that contributed to his growth. So what did we learn from these professors? Well, Hitler and the Nazi Party pushed forward a major campaign in which he would travel around the country to say his speeches, as well as greet people and kiss babies in a somewhat theatrical manner. He used his powerful oratory skills to appeal to the desperate citizens and addressed in his speech getting revenge on the Allies, as well as making Germany a better place to live. Germans voted with their own interests economically at heart, and that the 1930s elections results would have been falsely analyzed, and it can be seen in theories such as catch-all, mass society, and class theories. With the economic depression hitting Germany, it affected the communist and working class differently, and they voted accordingly. According to the geographical area, it is corresponded to what type of people live around there, and would hence affect how many votes are received from there. For example, in the East Coast, it had more votes because of the former Prussian areas. The Nazi Party changed strategies with gaining power, because in the past they used a coup and it didn't work due to the failure in the Munich Beer Hall Putsch. Women before 1930 would be slightly attracted by the NSDAP in voting, but would either vote according to what the husband voted or didn't vote as much as the men. But after 1932, the NSDAP attracted many female voters in addition to the youth, because they promoted the involvement of youth in politics. All these factors had a role in pushing Hitler and the Nazi Party to gain the largest group in the Reichstag, as well as Hitler's coming power to 1933.